Hi, welcome to Crime Clueless. We're your hosts. I'm Jenna.
And I'm Laura.
I have a brutal case for you today.
Oh, great.
Yeah, it is solved though.
Well, that's good. That's what I need right now. Solved cases.
Yeah.
My mind can't handle any more chaos of cold cases and so many questions.
I know. Those are tough. We need one to show us and remind us that they do get solved sometimes.
Sometimes. Yeah. Not as often as we would like, but.
No, but that's why we share the unsolved ones, right? One day.
Yes. One day.
Should we jump in?
Yep, let's do it.
All right. Christy Mirack was a beloved 25-year-old sixth grade teacher who had only recently begun her dream job when she was brutally murdered just before Christmas, 1992. Christy grew up in the small town of Shamokin, Pennsylvania. A small town, it's a coal mining town. There's about 10,000 people that lived there in the 90s and late 80s. She had a sister named Alicia and a brother named Vince. From childhood, her family said she always wanted to be a teacher. That was her dream. She graduated from high school in 1985, where she was on the yearbook staff, student council. She was also a member of the pep club. She attended Millersville University to pursue her teaching degree and graduated in 1989. After college, she began teaching remedial reading to students that needed a little bit extra help at Roarstown Elementary. Halfway through the 1991 to 92 year, a teacher went on leave, so she was given her own first grade class. In the fall of 1992, she was given the position as a full-time teacher teaching sixth grade at the same elementary school, which is in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. Christy was known for her warm, energetic, bubbly, outgoing personality. She was very talkative, very opinionated. She would make a room light up immediately, her brother Vince recalled. In December 1992, Christy was living in a 3-bedroom townhouse near Lancaster, so she was pretty close to work and was thriving in her first full-time teaching role. She had had 2 roommates, but one had moved out recently, and she and the other roommate were preparing to move into a smaller 2-bedroom townhouse at the start of the new year. On the night of December 20th, 1992, Christy was at home finishing up decorating for Christmas. She had bought each of her students copies of a book titled Miracles on Maple Hill. She wrapped each one individually for each of her students and wrote a note in them that said, "Wishing you a very Merry Christmas and a great 1993. Love, Miss Mirack." It was
that's really sweet.
Typical, I know. I don't know how many students she had, but to write a note to each one, wrap it, really sweet.
We've been reading through all of our Christmas books, and I found one that one of my kids has from their kindergarten teacher. And it says, "Merry Christmas from Mrs. B," I think it said. But I was like, that was so sweet. And we still have it. He's in 7th grade now. So
that's really sweet.
Really sweet. And it means a lot to him.
Absolutely. Yeah. They know that getting something special wrapped, that definitely means something.
Yeah.
They said it was typical of this energetic young teacher who wanted to do everything she could for her class. This is what she wanted to do with her life, and she poured everything she had into it. The next morning, Monday, December 21st, 1992, Christy never arrived at school. Christy's roommate had left their home around 7 a.m. that morning for work, while Christy stayed behind to finish getting ready. Normally, she would leave home at 7:45 a.m., but on this day, she did not. By 8:45 a.m., when Christy still hadn't shown up for school, her principal, a man named Harry Goodman, was concerned. Absolutely, unlike Christy, not to show up and not call in, for them to just not hear from her. He called her phone repeatedly. No one answered. He decided to go check on her, which is really sweet. I'm sure he has a million things to do in that week before they're going to be out for the holidays.
Yeah.
He drove to Christy's apartment, which is about 15 minutes away from the school. He parked outside and he found her car parked outside. He remembers seeing the windows iced over, a sign that it hadn't moved that morning. Approaching the townhouse, Harry noticed the front door was slightly ajar. Inside, he discovered a horrific scene. Christy was lying on the living room floor, face up, motionless. She was still wearing her coat and her gloves as if she had been headed out the door to work. The presents she wrapped for her students were scattered on the floor around her. This detail that just is heartbreaking.
Yeah.
Harry later said he would never forget what he saw. I told the police what I saw, but I've never told anybody else what I walked in on. I struggled for years with this. It was screaming, horrific nightmares, he said at the moment. Shocked and distraught. And remember, this is before most people had cell phones. Harry ran to the neighbor's house and they dialed 911 for help. Police and paramedics arrived, but unfortunately it was too late. Christy was pronounced deceased at the scene. Investigators noted signs of a violent struggle in the living room. There were scuff marks on the floor, overturned items. Everything indicated that Christy had fought her attacker fiercely. A wooden cutting board from Christy's kitchen lay near her body, stained with blood. Police believed that it had been used as a weapon to bludgeon Christy. Their hypothesis was that Christy may have grabbed the cutting board in self-defense, and then it was turned on her.
Oh, that's awful.
I know. An autopsy later that day documented the brutal extent of Christy's injuries. She had suffered severe blunt force trauma to her neck, face, back, chest. Her jaw was fractured. The killer had also strangled her to death, and that was determined to be the final cause of Christy's homicide. In addition, there was clear evidence of a sexual assault. Christy's pants and underwear were torn, and they did find DNA in the form of semen all over her body. And it was also on the carpet beneath her. Police collected numerous swabs and other trace evidence from the scene for forensic testing. They even cut the carpet that was under her and sent that for testing. It seems like they did a pretty good job, which is impressive because this is the only murder in that city in 1992.
Oh, wow.
So they weren't really prepared to deal with something this horrific.
Yeah. Or versed on that, if that's not something they do very often.
Right. Investigators worked to piece together a basic timeline. Christy's roommate confirmed that Christy was alive and well at 7 a.m. when she left for work. Two neighbors in the townhouse complex reported hearing a single high-pitched, unexpected scream around 7:15 a.m. coming from Christy's residence. Now, they said when they heard this, they waited to hear another one, but they didn't. And so they assumed it was somebody being excited about something Christmas related, holidays. It didn't seem to them that it was something they needed to call police for because there was only the one.
Yeah, that's unfortunate.
I know. By 7:45 a.m., when Christy would normally leave for school, she had already been attacked. So this meant the crime occurred in a very narrow 30-minute window.
Yeah.
And the sun didn't rise that day until 7:29, but it's on its way. I mean, you don't expect that first thing on a Monday morning when it's getting light outside.
Yeah, at 7:00. That's
right. The brazenness of the intruder striking on this Monday morning in this quiet residential area really suggested to police and investigators that the killer either watched Christy's routine or knew her schedule enough to strike when she was in her home briefly alone.
By herself. Yeah. That's what I was thinking. It was right after her roommate had left.
Yeah.
But really was
attention.
That bright outside.
Right.
Ugh, awful.
I know. Now, despite all of the forensic evidence, because this perpetrator left behind a lot of DNA, initial analysis provided no immediate leads. Crime scene technicians had the DNA profile of Christy's murderer by the mid 1990s, but when they eventually ran it through CODIS, they found no matches. The profile did not match any known offender in the database. This unknown man had never left his DNA, and it's never been entered in the system. So he doesn't have a felony record, anything that could connect whoever this was. From the moment Christy's body was found, Lancaster County authorities threw themselves into the investigation. Detectives canvassed the neighborhood and interviewed over 1,000 potential witnesses and suspects in the weeks and months that followed.
Oh, wow.
The FBI Behavioral Analysis Unit was called in to build a psychological profile of the attacker. They theorized that the killer was likely a loner who didn't stand out in a crowd. This would prove to be very wrong. Early on, police had gotten a vague description of a suspect and a vehicle, which they circulated to the public, though those details weren't specific enough to crack this case. Investigators turned a close eye towards people in Christy's orbit. Harry, the principal who had found her, was questioned. He had discovered her. They called it a matter of routine. He was quickly cleared, though. Friends and family were interviewed at length. Those close to Christy initially suspected the killer must have been someone she knew, that she must have trusted whoever it was to let them into her home that morning. And this is because Christy and her roommate were known for being over the top, which I don't feel like there is any over the top, but that's what reporting says about safety. They always locked the door, always. They had the wooden sliders that go in the sliding doors that were always in place. Her brother even said once that he came to the house and she even had the people and she looked through and she made him say who was at the door before she opened it.
Oh, interesting.
Be very sure.
Well, that's good.
Yeah. So they're theorizing that it must be someone she knew that she let in the house. The other side of that is somebody watched Christy's roommate leave, and then as she opened the door to leave herself, pushed their way in.
That's what I was thinking, especially since she had her coat on and she was carrying the presents,
gloves,
that she was probably locking out the door and they forced their way in that way.
And she could have been distracted, in a hurry, not really looking out before she walked out the door that day.
Or turned around to lock it and they came up behind her and
pushed her in,
took her in that way. Yeah.
Which could have been the scream at 7:15.
Could have been.
One suspicious incident soon came to light. The day after the murder, a 51-year-old married man arrived at Roarstown Elementary with flowers, asking to see Christy, claiming he hadn't heard she'd been killed. Now, it turned out this man had been secretly dating Christy, despite being quite a bit older than her and married. And this was a fact that Christy had kept even from her family. For a time, the secret boyfriend and his wife were scrutinized by police. However, the DNA evidence conclusively ruled him out as the attacker. He also had an alibi that could be proven, so he was cleared of suspicion. And I did read that he and his wife were moving to, I believe it was Virginia. And so him and Christy had basically broken things off at this point, which might have made him more of a suspect in their eyes. If they didn't understand the full context, her family couldn't weigh in on it. I'm sure her roommate knew, but maybe she couldn't really provide the details like that. By comparing DNA or other evidence, investigators eliminated over 60 potential suspects by 1995. Lead after lead fell apart. The Lancaster County District Attorney at the time later reflected on this frustrating period. He said, "Initially, we thought we had plenty of viable suspects, but when you start running out of them, you're running out of them." Despite extensive efforts, over 1,500 interviews, a $10,000 reward offered by Christy's family, constant diligence, no credible suspect or motive was ever confirmed in the 90s. By the end of that decade, Christy's case went cold. The unanswered murder of a young teacher weighed heavily on the community.
Yeah.
Christy's violent death sent shockwaves through Lancaster County. Teachers and students at her school were traumatized. Counselors were brought in, and classes were rocked by the sudden loss of this popular, young, happy, energetic teacher just days before the holidays. One of Christy's former sixth grade students later said the tragedy really did shape a lot of us. And they were just kids at the time, 11, 12.
Yeah.
In fact, this student was inspired by the case to become a news reporter, determined to help shed light on stories like Christy's. The entire community was on edge, knowing a brutal murderer was on the loose.
Not someone that they could find, so not even a lead or someone possibly connected to her, just some person. They don't know who it is. That's frightening.
It's really scary to think that somebody who's never been caught before or doesn't have a history can be capable of something like this and out on the loose, essentially.
Yeah.
East Lancaster Township was generally a peaceful area. Like we mentioned, they hadn't had a murder that entire year. Christy's family, meanwhile, fought to keep her memory alive and pressure authorities not to give up. Her parents and siblings spoke to the media. They attended yearly memorials. Heartbreakingly, in 2002, Christy's mother, Jerry, was dying of breast cancer without any answers to her daughter's murder. From her deathbed, Jerry made a public plea in the newspaper for anyone with information to come forward, desperately hoping for a breakthrough before she passed away. No useful tips came, and she did pass away that year, never knowing who had killed Christy. Christy's older brother, Vince, took up the mantle of advocacy. In 2007, 15 years after Christy's death, Vince leased a billboard along a Lancaster highway to publicize the unsolved murder. The giant billboard bore Christy's photo, details of her murder, and urged anyone with information to contact police. It generated a lot of response, Vince later said of the billboard, but there was nothing, never anything that was concrete enough, nothing that led to a resolution. A couple of years later, Vince also started a Justice for Christy Facebook page, trying to spark fresh leads online with a different audience. The Mirack family refused to let the case be forgotten. Within local law enforcement, Christy's case continued to loom large. One veteran detective kept Christy's photo on his desk for years as a constant reminder. He later told a reporter that I see it every day and think about it every day. This case truly haunted the investigators that worked on it. Despite the persistence, the trail remained ice cold. As years turned into decades, frustration and grief only grew. Years passed by, the family was very frustrated, investigators were frustrated, and the public was frustrated that this murder had occurred and there were no answers, said Lancaster prosecutor Christine Wilson. By 2015, over 23 years since Christy's murder, a new generation of law enforcement leadership in Lancaster County decided to reinvestigate the cold case from scratch. Lancaster County District Attorney Craig Stedman assigned his team of county detectives, including Christine L. Wilson, who we just mentioned, now a DA and a former classmate of Christy's, to take a fresh look at every piece of evidence. Wilson pored over the old case files on nights and weekends, and Stedman's office re-interviewed witnesses. They reviewed forensic evidence with new modern techniques. Stedman said, I think it was the appropriate time to get some fresh eyes. We took the entire file, the evidence, we started again from the ground up.
Wow, that's great that they do that. And hopefully I'm guessing they have enough stuff preserved in the appropriate way to be able to analyze it again. So that's great.
I really think in this one that they did a good job collecting evidence, preserving evidence.
Yeah.
We're just waiting for technology to catch up.
Yeah. I'm glad it is.
Me too.
It's good. I'm excited. I think it'll be really cool to see all the cold cases that start to be solved, especially ones like this, because it's the DNA technology is so much better. It is amazing.
Agreed. It's crazy what they can do now.
Yeah.
And that is exactly one major reason for the renewed hope, the advancement of DNA technology since 1992. By the mid-2010s, we had new forensic methods that offered possibilities that, of course, hadn't existed during the original investigation. In 2016, one of the people working on the case attended a seminar hosted by Parabon Nanolabs and learned about genetic genealogy and how they could use that when you have a really good DNA sample to track down someone.
Yeah.
They reached out to Parabon, who took their case. And as we know, Parabon specializes in DNA phenotyping, using the genetic material to predict a person's physical appearance and their ancestry. The unknown killer's DNA from the crime scene was sent to Parabon Labs, and they developed a detailed analysis of what the man might look like. This included estimates of his ancestry, his hair color, eye color, skin tone, facial structure, and even composite sketches of the suspect's face at different ages.
So cool what they can do now.
Agreed. It's amazing. In November 2017, 25 years after Christy's murder, authorities publicly released the Parabon-generated composite image of the potential killer. The illustration depicted a male of European descent with light brown hair, brown/hazel eyes, a mix, and medium skin tone. They put pictures showing him at age 25 and age 50. These DNA snapshots, possibly a long shot, but investigators hoped that someone might recognize the face.
Yeah.
Seeing the image was really emotional for Christy's family. Her brother Vince said it was gut-wrenching. I went through those images over and over with people I've run into, people she knew, trying to see if any familiar face matched the composites. Unfortunately, the tips that came in from the public based on the sketches did not pan out. None led to a viable suspect. By early 2018, Christy's case remained unsolved, but these groundbreaking new approaches were about to be used.
Yes.
When news broke that California police had cracked the notorious Golden State Killer case from the 70s and the 80s by using genetic genealogy, this investigative method, if you've not heard our cases covering genetic genealogy before, real quick, it involves uploading a suspect's DNA profile to a public genealogy database like GEDmatch to identify relatives, building out family trees to see if they can track down the suspect. Vince Mirack remembers that his first reaction when hearing about the Golden State Killer was, why can't they do something like that with Christy?
Yeah.
But our Lancaster County authorities were already thinking the same thing. In May 2018, Lancaster investigators partnered with Parabon again and their lead genetic genealogist, C.C. Moore, to apply this cutting-edge method to Christy Mirack's DNA evidence. Moore, who really is a pioneer in her field, and I think she might be the person that we have mentioned the most in these cases one-to-one. She's been vital to solving so many. It's truly incredible work. She said, I felt really drawn to Christy's case. She seemed like somebody I would have liked. With the district attorney's approval, Parabon converted the unknown killer's DNA from the crime scene into the specialized data file compatible with the genealogy websites. In late May 2018, they uploaded this DNA data to GEDmatch, which is an open access genealogy database, and it allows users and law enforcement to compare DNA and find relatives who have submitted their own DNA profiles. The results were almost immediate. Several distant relatives of the unknown suspect popped up in the GEDmatch search. People who shared some DNA segments with the killer's profile. None of these were exactly super close relatives, but distant cousins, third cousin levels. This meant detectives had to cast a little bit of a wide net across family trees. C.C. Moore got to work using traditional genealogy research techniques. She built extensive family trees, going back to great-grandparents, and then coming forward through the generations. She scoured public records like census data, birth and marriage certificates, obituaries, old newspapers to map out how these families were connected. Moore then looked for a point where multiple family lines intersected on one individual who could be the suspect.
That's so cool.
Right?
That's really cool.
Her work seems so interesting.
Yeah.
I think it's one of the coolest jobs.
Yeah, I think so too.
Now, crucially, the DNA analysis also provided clues to the suspect's ethnic background. The genetic data indicated the killer was likely mostly Northern European, but with a portion of Hispanic, specifically Puerto Rican heritage. This was an important clue to narrow the field.
Yeah.
As Moore built one family tree of interest, she noticed an ancestral branch with ties to Puerto Rico. In local newspaper archives, she found a 1990s engagement announcement that caught her eye. It mentioned a woman from the Target family line who had married a man with a Puerto Rican surname. The announcement listed their son's name, a name that was different from the family's English surnames. Moore had a hunch and dug deeper. She discovered an online magazine feature about that son, a man named Raymond Rowe, in which he mentioned that he loved to cook Puerto Rican food because his father was Puerto Rican. Everything clicked into place. Here was a man in Lancaster of the right age whose genetic makeup, half Puerto Rican, half Northern European, perfectly matched the unknown DNA profile. After 26 years of dead ends, within just a few days of analysis, C.C. Moore had a name for investigators. Raymond Ray Rowe. D.A. Stedman was stunned at how fast the genetic genealogy process succeeded. It turned out to be the biggest break we had, he said of that moment. Stedman later admitted that before trying genetic genealogy, we didn't have any more arrows in the quiver. They were out of leads. They had gone through everybody they could connect. Nobody was a match. He also said Parabon was really our last shot. Little did we know at the time, it turned out to be our best. However, even with a highly probable suspect identified, the work is not over. Detectives need ironclad proof that Raymond Rowe's DNA matched the crime scene DNA before they can arrest him, of course. You don't walk up to a homicide suspect and just say, "Hey, can you give us your DNA?" Stedman noted. Investigators formulated a plan to obtain his DNA without his knowledge, a method often called surreptitious collection of abandoned DNA. On May 31st, 2018, an undercover team trailed the 49-year-old Rowe as he worked a DJ gig at a local elementary school. Just gonna leave that there. Ironically, this suspect is entertaining school children, which is just awful. The agents were not thrilled that they were certain this was their guy, and they had to go watch him hang out with elementary school children.
Yeah, that's icky.
Yeah.
Especially what he did, the whole encompassing part of the murder too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
None of it's, no murder is good, but you know what I mean?
Right. Like this one's very, with sexual assault in there, and very brutal.
Yeah, unthinkable.
The agents observed Rowe drinking from a water bottle and chewing gum while DJing. When he discarded the half-empty water bottle and the gum, The surveillance team quickly retrieved them. These items were rushed to the Pennsylvania State Police Crime Lab, which extracted DNA from both. They had a whole smorgasbord to choose from.
Yeah.
On June 8th, 2018, the lab reported a conclusive match. The DNA from Rose gum and water bottle matched the DNA from Christy's rape and murder. After 25 and a half years, the mystery was solved. The odds, and this is a bonkers number, the odds of the DNA belonging to anyone other than Roe are astronomically small, on the order of 1 in sextillions, which is essentially, so not even billions or trillions. I saw one article that said octillion, which is such a crazy number. You can't even fathom that.
Yeah.
Raymond DJ Freeze, as he was known, was their man. On June 25th, 2018, Lancaster County officials held a dramatic press conference to announce the arrest of Raymond Rowe. He was 49. Rowe was taken into custody without incident at his home that day. He was outside, t-shirt, shorts, mowing his lawn, and I think he really knew nothing. Like these early cases, I believe that Christie's was the third solved with genetic genealogy.
Yeah.
And I think these people who think they got away with it for that long had no idea it was a possibility that they could be tied in such a substantive way. He really is like, I don't know who it is.
Yeah, just very unsuspecting.
Yeah.
Well, they should be suspecting. They should know they're coming for them.
They should, but I think for these early ones,
they didn't.
They did not.
Yeah.
News of DJ Freeze's arrest left the community stunned. He wasn't a drifter or an unknown figure. He was, in fact, kind of a local celebrity of sorts, which is why the FBI's analysis that they did, saying he liked to stay out of the spotlight, was not on the money at all, or that he was a loner.
Yeah. Had he been DJing back then too?
Mm-hmm.
Is that where he saw her?
Possibly. So we'll talk more about that. And for a long time, they couldn't find a connection between her and this guy. They didn't know if he just had seen her from a distance and started following and stalking her. But they were able to connect that he was the house DJ at a club, and they actually found the card for that club and like a complimentary VIP pass to it in her purse. So whether he had just seen her on the streets and given it to her, or as a coincidence, or she had gone and that's how the connection was.
Yeah.
He still maintains that he's innocent. So we can piece together as much as we can with the evidence, but we've never gotten to hear his side of it. He was a popular wedding DJ and music entrepreneur. He had been a fixture in Lancaster's nightlife and the event scene since the early 90s. He had performed at countless weddings, school dances, community events, and like I said, he had been the resident DJ at that local club in the 90s. Actually, a couple of Christie's students, when they were getting married way later on, had tried to book him as their DJ. For both that we know of, he was already booked. But that would have been horrific to find out after the fact.
Oh, yeah.
Outwardly, Rowe seemed to be an ordinary, even upstanding citizen. He was a father of 3. He went to church. He was a man with only a minor misdemeanor on his record, which was just a noise complaint from a gig way in the past.
Was he married at the time of her murder, or did he get married after?
I believe he was engaged or he had a girlfriend, but he did go home on the day of the murder. They were living together and they got married a couple months later. They did end up getting divorced, and he was remarried when he was arrested.
Oh, okay.
That's a good question. She said in an interview later that It makes her sick to her stomach that he just came home and slept by her after committing that rape and murder and acting like nothing was wrong. She had no idea that that's how his day started.
Yeah, that's wild.
To investigators' knowledge, like we kind of talked about, there was no obvious link. He had never been on investigators' radar. He wasn't on the list of suspects. There hadn't ever been a tip that called him in. He wasn't, even as public-facing as he was when they put out the pictures, nobody connected the two. The revelation hit the news. Lancaster residents were in disbelief. How could the friendly DJ who played at their community events be this long hidden killer? I think everybody in Lancaster was shocked by the news that Ray was arrested and his DNA was found, said one acquaintance who had worked with Ray before. Everyone knew him. They knew his family. How could he have done this? Many who knew Raymond struggled to reconcile the fun entertainer that they'd seen at parties with the violent predator accused of Christy's rape and murder. Roe's history gave no obvious warning signs. He had been married 4 times. An ex-girlfriend did later describe him as sometimes controlling and temperamental, but never physically violent. There was no apparent grudge or motive, no known contact between Raymond and Christy, leaving the community to wonder why she was targeted.
Yeah.
In short, this case was cracked by DNA and persistent detective work, not because anyone ever suspected Roe. Even C.C. Moore, who built the case against him, said, I was shocked because Roe seemed like such a normal person, a successful, talented family man. So wild to me. With Raymond Roe in custody and forensic evidence overwhelmingly implicating him, prosecutors prepared to take the case to trial. When he was arrested, he went in pretty chill, saying he didn't know who Christy was. He didn't know anything about the murder that they were talking about. He was in the interview room just before 2 p.m. that day. The interview between him and detectives is 101 pages long. It's quite detailed. The detectives are talking to him about his work, his family, his life experience, his education, a recent trip he had gone on. They actually wanted to arrest him, but he had gone on a 3-week vacation, like a road trip to see the national parks with his family. They kind of had to wait, and knowing that he was their guy and waiting that long was torture for the investigators.
Especially for 3 weeks. That's a long time.
It is. They asked him about his car. He told them that he drove the same car that was spotted at her apartment that day. They asked him about the murder of Christy Mirack, and he said he didn't know the name. He had never met her. They showed him pictures. He said, she doesn't look familiar to me.
Yeah.
He even said that she looked like, quote, a typical girl and not his type, which is disgusting.
Yeah.
He said he had never been to the apartment complex that she lived in. They pointed out that his drive from where he lived at the time to work would take him right past that apartment complex. And he was like, yeah, it would, but I've never stopped. They showed him the picture that was made. He said, this doesn't look familiar to me. They're like, again, it's you. We know it's you.
Yeah, we know it's you.
Never seen this guy. Then they told him that they had put in his DNA and it came back as a 100% match. He acted completely incredulous, like he couldn't believe it. He hadn't done this, and I have no idea why I'm in here.
That is wild to me. Your DNA was found all over this scene.
All over.
We have your DNA and it matches 100%. They're like, no idea how that happened.
No.
Wasn't me still.
Don't understand DNA. It's not your blood type. It is improbable that it came from anybody except you.
Yes. It's just So wild that they're just, no, wasn't me.
Yeah.
Okay, sir.
Detectives did point out that they had found his semen and DNA all over the condo. And he was like, yeah, I don't know how that happened. At one point towards the end of their interview, he said, quote, if you're trying to get some type of confession, I don't know what to say to you. And they were like, it doesn't matter. We have what we need.
Yeah.
They did take his DNA there to make sure that there's no chance that it was the wrong water bottle or the wrong gum, even though they were extremely careful. They did test it and it was still that perfect match.
Yeah.
Lancaster prosecutors prepared to take the case to trial. They were confident the chances of a randomly selected, unrelated person matching this DNA were octillion, septillion, a number that we don't even say. In other words, it is the defendant, the DA Stedman explained, underscoring that it was impossible that it wasn't his DNA at the scene.
Yeah.
Given the nature of the crime, the prosecution initially announced that they would seek the death penalty. Facing this mountain of evidence, Raymond did choose not to fight. I'm guessing his lawyers explained to him about DNA evidence and that playing dumb doesn't work anymore.
Yeah.
On January 8th, 2019, just weeks before the trial was set to begin, he did plead guilty in Lancaster County Court to Christy Mirack's murder, rape, and related offenses. So he did admit to being Christy's killer, but he has never said why. He gave no explanation. He didn't reveal any motive. He's never given any details. And it really does feel like he only said guilty to avoid the death penalty. And his lawyers probably told him, this is your only shot.
Yeah, I was thinking that too. He probably just said it. And he probably thinks, well, he probably says that outwardly, I just said it so I wouldn't get the death penalty, but I didn't do it.
Right, because
is beyond bizarre to think that way.
He has appealed a couple times since 2019, trying to say that they didn't test all the
saying
DNA
it or something. Maybe
well, kind of. He said that they probably only tested one speck of DNA. They didn't test everything. And in that appeal, which is, I really hate when they victimize victims further after their death, he is saying in that appeal that they had a relationship. He came over that morning. So that explains how it got there. But if they tested every single thing at the crime scene, they would find the true killer. So while he said he's guilty, his appeals are still saying that he wasn't. And if you'll remember in his interview, he said he didn't know her. He'd never met her. He'd never been to that townhouse complex. Exactly.
Oh, but now they have a relationship where they're doing that and on the floor, because it was all over the floor too.
Exactly.
Like, it's just makes no sense.
Right.
He's just grasping at straws here. Open air. He's grasping at open air.
Yeah. Grasping at things they're trying to see, I'm sure, from other cases, because his current wife is still supporting him. She comes and visits him in prison, and recordings of their phone calls still show that they're trying to come up with ways to get him out. So that would be my guess. He did have to apologize and admit his guilt. His lawyer said in court, he has told us that he did it. And, quote, the person standing beside me has admitted his guilt. Rowe himself only spoke briefly. He turned towards Christy's family and said, I can't imagine what you're going through. I apologize. So there's that. Under the plea deal, Rowe was spared the potential death sentence, but did receive life in prison without the possibility of parole, plus an additional 60 to 120 years on top of that life term. In other words, 50-year-old Rowe will spend the rest of his days behind bars with no chance to get out.
Yeah.
The family still questions why her? Why?
Yeah.
It's really unfair. And we've talked about it in other cases that they don't have to share the motive or the connection, how he knew her, anything like that. It is not fair.
It's not fair. And it's awful because, did he do this to anybody else?
Exactly.
Maybe.
But now his DNA is in there. So if they run DNA on other cold cases and there's a hit, it will match to him.
It's crazy to me when people are that brutal and murder someone that they don't even know so brutally just the one time.
Right.
It's so bizarre to me.
Cases like Christy's are sending a powerful warning to killers who think they've gotten away. My greatest hope is that using DNA and genealogy will start to work as a deterrent, said Cece Moore when she was reflecting on Christy's case. If you're going to commit a violent crime, like a rape or murder, you are going to leave DNA behind. And if you leave DNA behind, we can find you. Yes. I think that quote is my favorite thing I've read in a while.
Yes, for sure.
In the end, the man who took Christy's bright life was brought to justice by the very clues he didn't even realize he left. After 26 years, they were able to give justice to Christy, this bright, beautiful woman who had the rest of her life ahead of her. It's not fair.
It's not fair. She was just starting and doing something she loved. It's just, for lack of a better word, horrific.
Exactly. We will remember Christy, share her story, and celebrate that DNA has come as far as it has. It continues to improve. And more of these cases where, while the family never gives up hope, it sometimes maybe feels like they're not going to get justice for their loved one, but there's always a possibility.
Yeah.
And that is the story of Christy Mirack.
So sad. All these young girls, so awful.
It is. And she was locking her doors. She was living her life.
Doing all the things.
It's really, really sad.
Really sad and terrifying.
Mm-hmm. Those ones, Monday at 7:15 a.m. right before Christmas.
At random.
Yep. Random.
If they couldn't find a connection between her and him. Because you said they interviewed like 150 people.
Oh, no.
And all the tips are so many people for so long, looked at it for so long, didn't have a connection.
And he was never on their radar.
Yeah, that's so scary.
I agree. These ones do scare me. I like the justice being served and the DNA helping, but they are really scary.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for joining us for this episode of Crime Clueless. We appreciate you spending your time with us as we dive into these cases. If you're looking for the resources that we used to create this episode, or you want to learn more about the story, head over to our blog. You can find it linked on our website, crimeclueless.com. We love to connect on social media. We announce new episodes. We share true crime things, funny things, other things.
Yeah.
We are on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and YouTube at Crime Clueless. If you enjoyed today's episode, we would be so grateful if you would take a minute to rate or review our podcast. You can leave a review on Apple. You can rate on Apple or Spotify. And we'd also be really grateful if you would subscribe to our YouTube channel as we work on growing that.
Yeah.
If you found this episode interesting, we would love if you would share our podcast. You can listen to Crime Clueless on Apple, Spotify, Amazon, YouTube, iHeart, Pod Guru, all the streaming platforms.
Everywhere you can find us, we're there.
Yep. And as always, remember, refuse to be clueless, careless, or caught off guard.
Not today, murderers.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.